that will be better. Actually, you can see. Okay.
As you can see, we are dressed for the weather. आकाश ने कहा मैं जैकेट टाई डाल के आने वाला हूँ, so you decide what you want to wear.
I didn't
So
say tie.
it was almost like saying that is going to be the dress code.
I never said tie.
No, you said I'm going to wear a jacket.
Jacket. I am wearing it.
At some point, I think it will start coming off, one by one, layer of clothing. We aren't that bad. One layer at a time. Okay, good afternoon. In this lovely Pune afternoon heat, nice dry heat, summer clearly getting warmed up for a 3-month stint. Okay, the purpose of this discussion is actually this book. Numbers Do Lie. You can see NT has been cancelled out. So Numbers Do Lie. So it's written by Impact Index and Aakash Chopra. They've got together to release this book, which was released last week. And we're going to be actually restricting ourselves to discussing about the Impact Index and the impact performances on the game, which throw up some very interesting findings. So it was only right that we had a panel that also had made an impact. As you can see, it's an impressive panel. Big hand to our panelists today. We got Jaideep, who is the man behind Impact Index, the founder, the man who conceptualized, and it's been there, it's been your baby for a long time now. More than 6-7 years, or even more than that. Yes. So that's Jaideep. So welcome to Jaideep. Aakash Chopra is sitting next to him. Aakash is a very interesting person, actually. You know, if you get a hard-working reporter, journalist like Gaurav Kalra, we've got Prem there, we've got Raja sitting there, and throw in an ex-cricketer in it, along with a hard-working journalist, throw in one of the best analysts of the game, a very argumentative person in it as well, and then you get Aakash Chopra. He's a combination of all that. And I have a lot of respect for him because he watches the game like no other. He sees things that we don't. So I think it was right for him to partner with Jaideep in this effort, because he's one who will always keep pricking the balloon, you know, when we feel really high about and feel good about ourselves. Gentleman sitting next to him, you would wonder what, you know, important the numbers. I mean, he created great numbers in Indian cricket, but they were beautiful numbers one day. You know, when they happened, they were great to watch. VVS Laxman, ladies and gentlemen, big hand to VVS Laxman. He's played the best innings that this sport has seen. We know which inning that is. The only time VVS have got up in the commentary box to applaud an innings. You know, I'm, as you know, a person who is slightly hard to please. But I got up because it was a great innings. The best part of that innings was, and I'm sure it will get discussed in our discussion here on Impact Index, is that it was quality from first ball till the end. Not once did it dip. And in the end, of course, India won the game. So very fortunate that VVS is with us. Okay, enough of the introductions. I think maybe perfect to get Jaideep to start this discussion. And the first thing that, you know, the Impact Index has thrown out is the god of cricket is number 2 on the Impact Index. Rahul Dravid is number 1 on the Impact Index. So that is the first one that I'm going to throw at Jaideep. How does the god come at number 2? I mean, how is that even possible?
Thanks a lot. I just want to say this just a couple of minutes. Bear with me for a minute. It's a huge thing for me, because if somebody had asked me to choose 2 people who I wanted to talk about impact with in my fantasy, and I've said this to Aakash, you know, about 3 years ago or something like that, and that would be Aakash Chopra and Sanjay Manjrekar, and it's actually happening thanks to Nikhil Naz, and we've got VVS Laxman here, who is you know, whom Impact loves, because the highest impact Indian Test performances in our history are by VVS Laxman. So this is like a surreal thing for me, and I hope I don't wake up anytime soon. As far as this particular question that you're asking, it's detailed in the book that if you actually look at the 34 test series that India either won or drew against strong opposition between 1990 and 2013, which is when which was Tendulkar's career span, 89 to 2013. You will find that the leading role was played by Rahul Dravid more than any other batsman. It is hard to think that was a coincidence. He clearly had a sense of occasion. He clearly had this thing. The batsman, by the way, who absorbed the most pressure amongst that incredible batting lineup was actually VVS Laxman, and that is not surprising to anybody for those who remember those incredible performances that he has given. And Tendulkar fundamentally performed at the same level right through his career.
He had a very high level.
Which is a high level, but he was more of a when the time used to come to really take the lead. And anyone who knows Indian cricket history in the last 15 years will remember that. It was Dravid and Laxman are the people who stepped up the most. It's not just the 281. There are many other times which also affected the series scoreline or changed the momentum in the series, like the famous 281. And his partner was Rahul Dravid. And of course, what happened at Adelaide,
So actually, these are what the numbers tell you, right?
Yeah.
There's no Jaideep bias in.
There is no bias. Maybe I should. No, not at all. Not at all. Maybe I should.
As cricketers, we have a certain instinct. VVS, Aakash, we have an instinct where we recognize a terrific performance. Maybe the fans, the masses may not appreciate it as much. Players that get respected in the dressing room as opposed to having, a large fan following. I think that is somewhere where the cricketer's instinct comes through. Did you also get the feeling that Dravid, when it came to match-winning impact, right? Is it
series-winning impact, because something that affects the series result.
Would be running such in close even? VVS, Aakash, both of you can answer this.
See, I personally feel that what works in Rahul's favor, and it actually worked in VVS's favor as well, is that when they walked into bat, so Rahul Dravid would invariably be walking into bat at 10 for 1, 20 for 1. Since he was there with Viru at the top, Sachin was 9 or 10 times walking out at 100 for 2 with no fault of his, but the stage has already been set. So that the initial pressure has been absorbed, the new ball has been taken care of, and India has got to a steady start, and therefore Rahul will walk away with that distinction that he was absorbing more pressure. In terms of VVS, again, since he was batting at number 6 a lot of times, even after Saurav Ganguly, then he was batting with the tail. So if you're batting with the tail, there are wickets falling around you. You have to stitch an innings together and keep the entire first for yourself and also for the team, which is a tough job to do. And for someone like VVS, of course, it's even tougher because you perhaps need someone like a Gilchrist to be batting at that number, or a Mahendra Singh Dhoni. And VVS was a touch player, a class player, but was not really a big hitter, not digressing. So that is where I think Rahul will definitely score over Sachin.
And as a cricketer, you got that feeling as well that Rahul would run Sachin close as far as just the impact on winning games and series was concerned?
Initially, when you saw Sachin in isolation, I was completely in awe like everybody else. I still am actually. He's the most complete player that we have seen over the last, 50, 60, 70 years. But when you stitch all those innings together and when you, not with the impact help, just watching, observing innings after innings, series after series, mostly overseas as well, something that we tend to value a little more, you'd find that Rahul was performing or coming up with those match-winning performances, those impact performances more often than Sachin. And yes, so that is the instinct that we have. Impact is putting it in a very tangible fashion, because that's an intangible, goes away instinct. But I think that's what impact has done here, and I agree with the impact on this one.
VVS? Firstly, you mentioned about the team respecting the performances, while the outsiders or the media don't really pick that up. A classical instance is what happened in Headingley in 2002. While Rahul, Sachin and Saurav got 100, it was Sanjay Bangar who the team felt played a very important role, where he played more than 260 balls for just 60 odd runs, and he was not even a natural or regular opener. And for him on seamer-friendly conditions to come and show that great determination and patience to wear out the English bowlers. So we as a team respected those kind of performances, and that's why that team or that generation was really good, where we appreciated the 1%ers or contribution which helped the team to win the game or save the game. And as far as Sachin and Rahul was concerned, when Rahul started his career, Sachin was already an established batsman.
About 7 years into his test
Yes,
career.
and everyone were in awe of Sachin, including myself, including the entire generation of cricketers I played with or I grew up with. And no one ever thought that Rahul will actually come close to Sachin. But it was just because of pure hard work, pure determination, discipline. I mean, you can give all the adjectives to Rahul because he's a role model, where he sometimes underestimates his own talent because he feels that he was not a naturally talented, gifted batsman. But I always felt right from the first time I saw Rahul that he was a naturally gifted batsman. But definitely not the kind of talent Sachin had. Sachin had talent exuberating right from the first time we all saw him. So if he has come close to someone like Sachin, that means it's really a great credit to him. And the position he batted was always going to be a tough position, especially when we play in overseas condition. And the team, especially from 2000, took a lot of pride in our overseas wins. And if you see those wins, Rahul will contribute. And I don't want to be diplomatic, which Aakash always feels that I am diplomatic. But I don't like comparing players.
But in the dressing room, you felt that Rahul was adding as much value.
Not only
So,
Rahul, there were a lot of players who were adding value.
Viru, for example.
Yeah,
as a
Viru,
throw.
for example, had that impact as an opener. You had Saurav, you had at various stages, MS Dhoni at number 7. I mean, I've never seen a wicketkeeper batsman who would turn the game on his own. We talk so much about Sangakkara, we talk so much about Gilchrist, but MS was one of the best in Test match cricket. So I wouldn't compare Rahul and Sachin, and I'm sure Jaideep and Aakash would do that in through numbers or through what they have done over the last 3 years. But if anyone had a huge impact in the success of Indian team, especially overseas in the batting department, it definitely has to be Viru as well as Rahul, because as an opener or as a number 3, it's the most challenging position to bat in overseas conditions.
Right, okay. We're going to talk about various performances, that come to our mind. What about Viru's 300? Where does it rank in the impact index? But do you think there is a need now for the numbers to go just beyond averages and strike rate? I think, is that the reason why, Jaideep, you felt frustrated watching us on commentary saying, wow, what a player, average of 58. And you felt that you needed to look more deeply into that to come out with the real sort of value that a player has. Is that the reason why you got into this?
So let me illustrate that with an example. If I may ask you, which one do you think is your highest impact test match performance in your career? You played some very fine innings, like the century that saved the match against Zimbabwe. You made a 218 against Pakistan in Pakistan. You made 2 other test centuries. Which performance in a match do you think would be your highest impact performance in your career? Because I think the answer might just surprise you.
Yeah, I think my Karachi 100 may have been important because India was looking to save that test match, first test match of the series. So that may have been quite high on the impact index. And maybe against Zimbabwe. It was a
it was a tough
test
Zimbabwe
match.
side,
Remember,
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
We almost sort of were asked to follow on by Zimbabwe in that test match. And I got, at the time, the second slowest test innings ever. And Ian Chappell doesn't let me be proud of that innings. I said, I had to save the game for India. It wasn't about winning, it was about playing out time. But he said a strike rate of 20 or 30 and with the kind of attack, Sanjay, how could you live with yourself, playing an innings like that? Because Ian Chappell is all about attack. So let's hear from Jaideep Verma about my highest impact innings.
So your highest impact match performance is against West Indies in 1994 in Mumbai when you made 51 in the first innings and 66 in the second innings. You came into bat at 99 for 4, which very quickly became 99 for 5. You had a partnership with Nayan Mongia. And then in the second innings, you came into bat at 88 for 5. And India got a lead of 29 runs or something in the first innings. So it was a very, very tight situation. A low-scoring game. You made 66. Tendulkar got 85, and your partnership with Tendulkar took India to, safer terrain, and we won by 9.
It was my comeback match, actually, I remember. I had lost my place in the team. I came back, but I didn't get hundreds, and I got happy when I got 50. good. I'm back in this team and played a couple of loose shots. I remember Srinath telling me, Sanjay missed out. Yeah.
But what is remarkable is that you were the highest impact batsman of the match, even though you made 3 runs less than Tendulkar in the match cumulatively. You were the highest impact batsman because of the pressure you absorbed in the middle. And a batsman who bats at number 6 and number 7, becoming the highest impact batsman in a test match, is very, very, very rare.
Yeah, I see.
And you became the number 3. I think you became India's number 3 by the end of the series just because of that performance. And also, from a series context, that was India's only win in the series because the series was drawn 1-1 in the end. If you remember, Mohali, India lost. So even from a series context, that was a hugely, hugely significant performance.
Yeah, there's a nice story after the match as well. One of my great supporters, Hemant Waingankar, if you remember, he was very supportive of all the young Mumbai talent. So he was very happy I got a couple of 50s and I was back in this Indian team, re-established myself. He said, we must thank God for what has happened to you. So he took me to the Siddhivinayak temple and there was a Ganpati thing, red stone or something, got me to wear it. You wear this, this will be there with you for good luck. Next match I got 0 and 1 in Nagpur. So I picked it up and left it aside.
No, but that one was thanking what has happened.
Yes. What has happened, yeah. Because VVS, VVS actually when he made his debut was my room partner. And I was sharing my room with VVS and a lot of, what should we call it?
He's just driven down from
There was
Shirdi.
almost a mandir next to you on the left.
He's just driven down from Shirdi, so obviously
driven down from Shirdi.
So
There you are. VVS, are you fascinated by numbers? Because when we look at you, we look at an artist who went out there, you played for the team. You could see it, numbers were incidental to you. With a lot of other stalwarts in Indian cricket, you could see that numbers were not incidental. Sometimes the team goals actually suffered because they set their minds on some individual milestone. Numbers matter to you?
I would be lying if I said numbers didn't matter to me. I think for any sports person, in the end, the results do matter. But for me, those numbers had a lot of importance if that helped the team to either win the game or save the game. So, I mean, no batsman I've played with or I've seen will not be happy with a 50 or a 100 or a 150. Milestones do definitely matter. But just playing for the milestones, I always feel that milestones are byproduct of what you're trying to do for the team.
Tell me about which you think was your biggest impact innings. I hope you've not read your book very carefully, and let's see whether
I'm going to read that.
Yeah,
very
let's see whether it matches Jaideep.
It's obvious.
So where do you, which one do you think?
See, that's what, Sanjay, you yourself were surprised that you didn't realize that West Indies test match in Mumbai was the highest impact. See, everyone talks about 281, everyone talks about 167. See, every innings you play for your team, whether it be Ranji Trophy, whether it be Dilip Trophy, or at the international level, whenever you do well, you feel happy. But there are various factors which help you to do well. So when I got my 281, I was in tremendous form. So I was full of positivity. So that situation didn't actually seem difficult to me.
Yeah, 169 was just 3 months before against Australia.
67,
no, it was not 3 months. It was like almost 1 year.
Wasn't it Jan?
Yeah, Jan 2000, and this was
2001.
Yeah, so
March.
almost 1 year back. 2019.
Jan, yeah.
So I had a very good domestic season, whether Ranji Trophy or Dilip Trophy, even against Australia in the warm-up game, I got runs at Nagpur. So I was high in confidence. But at the same time, I was having insecurity because I was not establishing myself. I took a decision of batting in the middle order, not going to open anymore. In the first test, I missed out in Mumbai. And somehow always it used to be the case with me where 2 or 3 games I don't do well. The axe used to be on. So that kind of pressure also was there. So simultaneously, I feel that when I got 69 against Australia in Mumbai.
That's in the book.
That's in the book, yeah. So I felt that probably that was the toughest innings for me. One of the toughest innings, because I know that I've played a lot of tough knocks. Not necessarily the way I played or the situation, but mentally, whenever I was not in form, we all know as a batsman that whenever you're not in form or whenever you're under tremendous pressure to retain your spot in the team, it adds to that pressure. So I thought 69 because that series I didn't get runs. Bangalore, Chennai and Nagpur I didn't get runs. and then that kind of surface where it was probably the worst surface I played my career on, and to go out and get in the fashion I did in the second innings, and that partnership with Sachin helped the team to post a reasonable total, give a chance to our bowlers, and won the game. So again, winning the game was important, and the mental attitude of mine was something which I was very impressed, because even though I was under a lot of pressure, I went out and expressed myself.
So numbers don't actually take that into account, right? His feeling at the time going into those.
That is what is very difficult.
What is his number one, the 281?
281, 69 is the second actually, so that's great that
now,
he actually mentioned
281,
that. Yeah.
India wins, and that's why also it gets a lot of points on the impact index.
It does, but even if you look at it in a match context, even just purely in a match context, you don't even look at it from a series context, it is the biggest.
I'm sure a lot of you guys would be thinking, what about that 281? If Harbhajan Singh hadn't picked up those 13
Absolutely.
wickets in the match, 6 wickets in the second innings, would it still have been one of India's greatest innings if India had not won the game?
See, that is the thing. This is not about measuring talent. This is about measuring the impact a performance had, which is about circumstances. And how strong your team is part of your circumstances. But I'm saying you cannot measure everything, but even the things we can measure, like factoring in circumstances, when it comes to your impact, even with that, it is very important to be able to at least do that well. And it is completely a function of circumstances. We are not saying, but if somebody keeps doing it again and again, like he has done, he has produced this innings, several innings with his back to the wall, and actually taking India out of a hole several times. Then it's not a coincidence. It's not just a circumstance. It's not just the fact that there was one innings he played under, he got lucky during a circumstance. He did it again and again, like Dravid did it again and again in the big games. So, in that sense, yeah.
Rahul actually used to feel pressure playing on Indian pitches when the pitches were flat. There was no pace on it, where you knew that India would get 600, 700 runs. That is when he felt a little out of his comfort zone. What I also used to notice, I've said this several times, is that when India was in trouble, you found your comfort zone, VVS. So how did that actually help you? In fact, if India was in trouble, it somehow just relaxed you. You looked a lot more relaxed as a player, as opposed to most players who would go intense and nervous and feel defeated.
I think, again, it has to do a lot with your mind, and that kind of situation, the tougher the situation, it got the best out of me. And that's something even I remember when Paddy Upton, who was our mental conditioner, what I was trying to work with him is when India were in very comfortable position, say 300 for 3 on a placid wicket, and we're looking to declare probably say by scoring another 100, 125 runs, how am I going to play?
So
that was a tough, yeah, that was the tough situation for me to walk into bat. And that's something which throughout my career, especially the second half of my career, I had to work on.
Interesting. Akash, just a roundup of what's been said, because you're listening very intently. I'm sure you've got something nice to share with us.
I think the time has come to acknowledge things that we tend to notice less. For example, this VVS batted at a number where centuries can never be the yardstick. Whoever is batting at number 6 must never be judged by the number of centuries he scored. Average, you can still wonder that, okay, you may remain not out a few more times, and therefore the average can get beefed up a little. But centuries will never do justice. So you have to find another yardstick to judge a performance, judge a player.
Averages also can be misleading for somebody who likes to stay not out. For example, there's a great batsman rumored to bat lower down the order only because the average looked impressive.
So you're absolutely right. So the thing is, when we talk about, and VVS is right, the team acknowledges it, it appreciates it as well, even if it's like a 25, 30, 40 runs scored at the top, or somebody has made that contribution towards the end. But the numbers, the conventional numbers fail to address that. They don't tell you that. A century, when you've a century scored against say, Zimbabwe on a placid pitch, not your century, yours was very, very good. But current Zimbabwe team ranked number 10, and that test century can never be equal to a century scored on a ranked turner against Australia, or say Perth, you're playing the best fast bowlers in the world. But unfortunately, it will be recorded as the same century. So we all would know that, oh, he can't be a great player because, his overseas numbers are not great, or he has not scored runs against the top opposition. But you cannot quantify it. The conventional numbers fail you there.
Okay, now we know who's number 1 and 2. Where does VVS stand in your impact.
that is actually part of the story, that despite producing the highest impact Indian innings in Test cricket, you come, I think, sixth or seventh in on the thing. Partly because, and we talk about this in the book, because of your your failure rate. Because so he gives a very nice reason for that, which is exactly what he said, that maybe you were not batting in your right batting position. If you batted at number 3, unfortunately 3 and 4, like he says, were gone.
I'm convinced that if he
yeah.
batted at number 3 or 4,
There's no
he
doubt
would have
about it.
scored 10 more
Yeah.
centuries, 5,000
Yeah.
more test runs, but that's the way it is. And that's where I think, that's an actually interesting word, failure rate. We tend to judge the success. We don't really focus too much on the how often a player has failed. I think that failure rate is something that also must be looked at very closely. And
There's one actually Indian player currently who has an amazing failure rate. Have you guys noticed? Because we talk about it on air. It's incredible. I think he's got now 20 test innings and there's 15 failures in that. Yeah, KL Rahul, he's got 4 test hundreds, I think, and 150. So he wouldn't rank very high on
He
you.
doesn't. He doesn't.
So you reward consistency as well.
Of course, we reward consistency.
So is Akash's point valid? VVS, he should have batted at ideally number 4, because Viru
Yeah.
made no bones about how he wanted to bat down the order.
Yeah, so I've always told that, my favorite position was number 3. And I've always enjoyed that, including someone like Rahul knew that. So whenever Sachin was not there, Rahul would push himself to 4 and I would bat at 3. Right from my childhood I've done that. But then that's the beauty of team game. That's something which I take a lot of pride on, because I was asked to open. I took it up as a challenge. You know that, Sanjay, you've done that yourself against South Africa. Important thing for me when playing this great game cricket was it was an opportunity to do something for the country. So irrespective of how uncomfortable I was in those batting position, I wanted to find a way to score runs and win matches for my team or save matches for the team. And that's why while I got 281 at number 3, but some of the knocks I played at number 6 are more close to me. The reason is that was never natural. Aakash told at the start of this conversation that I was a time player. I relied a lot on timing. And at number 3, you get more opportunity because the bowlers are bowling attacking lines. The field is attacking, so there are a lot of gaps. All I had to do was just hit through the gaps, and that was my strength. But batting at number 6, it was just totally different, and the moment the keeper or a set batsman or the keeper gets out and then the bowlers come, the opposition captain invariably has a defensive field, looks to give me a single, rotate the strike and bowl out the bowler or the remaining batsman. So it was always tough for me, and that's something which I learned. In the first 2 years as number 6, I tried to be an MS Dhoni, a Yuvraj Singh, but I realized that I cannot be that. In the bargain, I was just getting out. It was not making any sense to me, not making any sense to the team's total. And that's when I had to find a way how to get the best out of the bowlers. And fortunately for me, the bowlers were very hardworking. They worked hard on their game, and I gave them a lot of trust and belief. So understanding what you can do, what you can't do, and try to do well in a position which is not your comfort position is something which is very important, I feel, especially when you're in a team game. Individual game,
I think VVS deserves an applause for this, because, as I'm listening to him, I realize here's an Indian batting stalwart, one of the greats, who virtually 80% of your batting career would have been in a position that wasn't ideal for you, which you didn't enjoy. So that's tremendous. So hats off to you, VVS, on that. The other thing, when you're batting with so many batting greats, sometimes the impact gets diluted.
You share impact, yeah.
Now, I've picked out Brian Lara's, we're restricting ourselves more to Indian cricket, but Brian Lara's innings against South Africa. I picked out a slightly low-profile series. There was one innings he played, which is 196 in a score of 347. This was, no, in the West Indies, I think, yeah. And there was another innings in the same series, 176 out of 296. So this is Brian Lara against a good South African attack. But because there weren't Rahul Dravid or a Tendulkar or a Sehwag around, they come out as great innings. So
But
is that fair?
Look, it's as fair as not having a Harbhajan Singh to bowl the other team out. So it kind of evens out. That's the thing about this, that it's a double-edged sword. Sometimes you'll be lucky for this reason, sometimes you'll be lucky for that reason. That's like life anyway.
No, but you're right. The fact is, when we talk about Virendra Sehwag, let's come back home. He's got 2 double centuries, or 2 triple centuries rather. But his highest impact performance, and I've not gone through the numbers this time, I'd say that innings in Gaul. He scored a double,
Easily the highest. Yeah.
double century at 270 or 290.
I think second highest was a 50 from Gautam Gambhir.
Correct, that was it. So India scored, I think, 320. I think that was the total, and he had a double century in that. So obviously that becomes a huge innings, and that's how it has to be judged. We remember that series against South Africa at home. When the team is scoring only 220, and 220 is your match highest, and it continues to reduce after every innings, then 55 has to be rewarded, awarded, or whatever, and acknowledged, but it slips out of your memory because other numbers are just humongous. You're talking about double centuries and triple centuries, and that's the way to yardstick to judge greatness. Then that poor 55 goes missing. But if you look in the context of that game and also the series, that 55 is remarkable because that actually is perhaps even more difficult to score than a triple century on a flat deck.
No, but just on that, Sanjay, quickly. For me, that's what I told at the start again was what a player is going through mentally or in that situation, at that particular situation is very important. So Gaul, Viru gets a double 100, but the other batsmen don't get runs. I agree with that, but Viru was, was high on confidence. So for him, it was a normal thing. Or Viru, when he got a triple 100 both the times, he was high in confidence. Or the 290 he got against Sri Lanka at Mumbai was high in confidence. For me, and I've told this in the Open before or to Viru also, for me the best knock Viru has played was the 100 he got at Adelaide in 2007-8 series. Because if he wouldn't have got 100, or he wouldn't have played those many number of balls, India would have lost the game, in fact. Because Rahul had fractured his finger, so we were one batsman
Does it feature there, Jaideep, in your...
It's a high impact inning, but not...
Viru was making a comeback. So I know for a fact that Viru was low in confidence. I know for a fact, even though Viru doesn't agree, that Viru was insecure. And he wanted to establish himself back in the team. And that's why you never ever see Viru not getting, or playing from, I think, lunch to tea without hitting a boundary. So for me, that was the high impact knock of Viru. From Rahul's point of view, yeah, the conditions in England or other big knocks he played was tough. But mentally, he was high in confidence. For me, Rahul's toughest innings was probably the Joburg, his first test century, because he still didn't have the self-belief that he belonged to the highest level against a good quality fast bowling attack. And in conditions favoring the South African bowlers. And the Mohali 100 against England. Because after Rahul resigned from captaincy, he had a string of low scores. And suddenly, someone like as great as Rahul Dravid was feeling that insecurity, whether he will be there in the team or not. And then to go to Mohali and against England getting that 100, which is really fought it out, for me that was a high impact knock as far as Rahul is concerned, because the way he was thinking at that moment. So there are various factors which I'm sure, it's very difficult to factor in one aspect why it's an impact in knock.
But I'm so glad you're bringing out these aspects, because what we are seeing here, guys, is one, couple of men of numbers. Aakash as well is, man of numbers.
Big time, big time.
Yes. And we've got somebody talking emotions. Emotions still such an important part of an individual performance. Sport is obviously a very high emotion activity as well. So this is nice to bring out the emotions as well. But obviously, those are the things you don't consider. There are few performances that we're seeing currently, which obviously you guys also have in mind. What does the impact index think of these performances? For example, Ashwin. I've devised a term for it called Murli Dharanesque, performance. Like here, Bradman-esque. His 5-wicket haul regularity, Ayaz, is incredible. Yeah, so let's find out from Mr. Jaideep Verma where he ranks.
Yeah, actually, somebody asked me this. Mukul Kesavan asked me this once on Facebook, and he was silent for some time, and he said, "I just fell off my chair." That's what he replied when I gave him the answer. Yeah, the answer is he is. Look, let's be clear. I know that objection is going to come that he has not performed enough high impact, away performances. But a man who has 8 Man of the Series, and Man of the Series isn't even a measure on impact. I'm telling it in a language that we are all familiar with. 8 Man of the Series awards in 15 Test series. This is fantasy fiction. This is not reality. That is what he has done, and it is incredible. He's the highest impact cricketer in the history of the game as of now, ever. And if you look at, you have to understand that, it's still a career, it's still a developing career, yeah.
वो सास बहू serial में होता है, dang, 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 3-4 close-ups.
Maybe that
so that
slapping
same
was
line
that,
you've got
yeah.
to say it again, because that is a big impact line in itself.
No,
Say
I
it
know it
again.
sounds bizarre. I know it sounds bizarre, but think about it. There is nobody in the history of the game who comes close to that. Of course, you'll say that
Highest impact bowler, or you're saying player, cricketer.
Cricketer ever in Test cricket. Now, of course, he's been lucky. He's played much more in India, in the subcontinent.
Does impact index take that into account?
Yes, it
overseas
does.
Performance?
Yes, it does. But we don't just give flat differentiation between home and away. What we do is we divide series in A, B, and C. So there could be a time when if you you're beating a side at home could be an A performance, but beating them in your backyard would be a B performance. So it kind of takes care like that. So it's not, for example, Mark Taylor's 1998 side, which even he played in and scored a wonderful innings in the second test. That is, that team is one of the greatest teams in the history of the game, which nobody talks about. That is the only test series it did not win. Forget lose, not lose. It won every other test series it played, that team. And would you say that you would rank that less than any other team you beat even away? It was a fantastic team. And yet, thanks to Sachin, what Sachin did in the first test, what Navjot Sidhu did, what Rahul Dravid did in the first test, what he did, what Azharuddin did in the second test, they won the series. There was a huge performance. So you have to consider those things also. So it's a little unfair to flatly say home and away are.
Now that you have put him, impact index finds him as the greatest. I use greatest word as in for Ashwin, the man with
you
the
can,
biggest
but
impact.
it makes me uncomfortable. but you can.
Can that change quickly?
Yes, it
in
can.
a year or two.
If he plays abroad and does badly, it will change.
So don't you think that's a very short span for something like such a massive proclamation almost to change?
But we are saying that it's still a work in progress, which is why we say in the book we say he's on his way to being the greatest cricketer of all.
How important is overseas performances for people, for say Asian cricketers abroad in say England, South Africa, Australia? Because a lot of people, especially the modern generation of players, when we bring up the overseas argument, let's see, how he does well overseas. Like my coach used to say with fast bowlers, it remains to be seen how he bowls with the old ball. So overseas, is that a yardstick for impact and greatness?
It should not be. And I think there's always this myth in sports. One is, yes, you want to go out and perform in conditions which are alien to you, which are something which you're not used to. But somehow in sport, and I've seen, I'm not only telling about the Indian mentality, it's general mentality is whenever someone does well in your home conditions, somehow people start questioning that performance and they start comparing with his performances overseas, and then they start doubting and telling that, okay, he's done well because the conditions suit him, and he will not be the same person, whether batsman or bowler, when he goes and plays in overseas condition, which I feel is unfair. Because what you have to see is ultimately when you're playing at the highest level, irrespective of where you play, I think the performance itself should be acknowledged, number one. Number two is, as a sports person, you always want to do well in conditions which you're not comfortable in. And that's the true measure, I feel, of a greatness of a player. Not to degrade him when he does well in conditions which are good.
So it's just like maybe a good player and a great player.
Let me talk about Federer. Now, Federer will definitely do well with his style of game at Wimbledon. But if Federer goes and wins a French Open, that's remarkable achievement as far as Federer is concerned. So I think it's the same in cricket as well. But just to not degrade, whenever Federer wins so many times in Wimbledon, saying that, oh, he's supposed to win in Wimbledon.
Should not dilute
that should not dilute the performance of Federer.
Thank you for saying that.
Because maybe, what happens, you see a good performance, like Ashwin, brilliant at home. But then you want to see, how much he can climb, up.
Yeah, but that's the point, Sanjay, is how many players actually have gone well and done well in overseas tours. Like we talk Shane Warne as probably the best spinner, Muralidharan the best spinner. Now, if you take the stats of Muralidharan and Shane Warne, you expect them as spinners to really do well in Indian conditions. But you see their strike rate in India it's below par.
Which is also interesting if you look at Indian fast bowlers as well. You know, we recently had a look at those numbers. People like Kapil Dev, Srinath. We expect their numbers to be better overseas, but that's not the case. You know, which is very interesting.
And we always talk, there's huge respect for Dennis Lilly as one of the best fast bowler world has ever seen. He's like the fast bowler's guru. But how many wickets did he take in subcontinent conditions?
They toured Pakistan once, got 2 wickets.
Exactly. So he must have taken just 5 or 6 wickets in subcontinent
But
conditions.
somehow, don't you think a player like Tendulkar or Dravid, you for that matter, subcontinent runs on fast, bouncy pitches as well. Versatility is one yardstick for greatness, isn't consistency,
Without a doubt.
versatility. So that's where I think perhaps people like me are always looking at a good performance and then looking at a great performance. And that's why maybe we look at overseas conditions to see whether this guy can make that jump from good
yeah, but
to
that's
great.
fine. But don't degrade the performance
Absolutely right.
in the home conditions.
That's a good point.
That is very
Absolutely.
important to remember.
Absolutely.
I
Akash.
think a couple of yardsticks here. What is obviously longevity of a career?
Yeah.
You'll get to know over a period of time, and that's when you will accumulate a lot of numbers, conventional or otherwise. And also adaptability. So adaptability is a key thing in judging greatness, anybody's greatness. And adaptability comes when you're talking about versatility, going overseas, doing well in different conditions. And we tend to rate them higher, which is only normal. When Rafa won the Wimbledon, only then everybody said, okay, fine, a great French Open player, clay, master of clay, but now he's someone who's a proper, true legend of the game. So that's something that will always be there. And yes, don't degrade it, but then you have to reward if somebody is versatile and is doing well everywhere.
You also mentioned longevity. I think that is a very important another aspect of a cricketer. I mean, to have a 10, 15-year career is not easy. You know, on my first tour, I asked Dilip, a good friend, you know, I think during that series in the West Indies, asked me, you know, how do you sleep at night? And I said, fine, no problem. You know, I get tired, I sleep. Okay, wait another 10, 12 years, you know. So it becomes tougher as you play more and more, you're aware of the pitfalls. Impact index doesn't take that into account.
Unfortunately, it
Longevity.
can't, yeah.
So that is where I might have an
It
issue
takes care.
with.
No, it does take care of longevity.
So
It
Ashwin's
does.
short career, should
Yeah,
he be
yeah.
rewarded so highly?
Look, you have to also look at certain things outside the realm of numbers. I mean, that is not something that, because you know that he has not played enough. So and also he has not played 50 tests yet. So you know that's also you have certain numbers that you say after 50 tests he's played more in different conditions. So that is something you can do outside of the numbers, and it's fine to tailor it accordingly. But you cannot also disregard what he has done in those 40 odd tests that he has played. Just like you cannot you cannot underestimate that 281 just because it came in Indian conditions, for example.
Yeah. VVS, did you go through a phase like most senior players, you know, when you have a long career, you had a long career, started off in 96, didn't you? Where you felt it just got tougher and tougher as it went on? Were there phases when it was very easy, and towards the end of your career, was it more difficult or was it easier with the experience being established and all that?
So I had a very different kind of career.
You had,
yeah, I
pretty
had.
good.
You know, and for me, the first 4 years was the toughest, because in India, until unless you get your first test 100, you're not a good batsman, or you don't establish your position.
What is this obsession with hundreds in India?
It's always been the case, you know, and also the kind of start you get your career is very important in India. Where not only in sport, you know, even movie industry you see, if your first movie is a hit, suddenly, you know, the way you're perceived or the way your brand is becomes totally different. If suppose your first 2-3 movies are a flop, then
That's
you have to
taken me by surprise, huh? VVS Laxman giving analogies of films, and I didn't know you were that kind of a person.
Yeah, every Indian loves watching films. But
Hindi or English more?
All, even Telugu.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Okay, please carry on.
Yeah, so I feel it's very important in India to establish yourself, you know, and then you're given more leeway. For me, the first 4 years was struggle to establish myself in the team, even though I was opening or batting at number 3, various positions. To make a mark myself, the turning point was a 281. You know, not even the 167, because after scoring 167, I just played one more match against South Africa, and again I was dropped. So for me, scoring that 281 and having that consistent run after scoring the 281 was very, very important, to change the perception of the people who are the decision makers. Not only the selectors, but the other decision makers in the board, and just the way you're perceived. And the second thing is, in India, again, like Aakash mentioned, if you don't get to an average of 50, you don't get to 25, 30 hundreds, then you're not seen as someone who has done well in your career. And there may be various reasons for that. Aakash touched a bit about that. So for me, the challenging part was the first 4 years. And again, the next challenging phase was my last 2 series, England and Australia. And it was not that, my reflexes slow down, as a lot of people mentioned. But it was more about putting pressure on ourselves.
Yeah.
And it will be the same with Rahul. Because our dream always, when we started playing international cricket, from 96 onwards, we always realized that whenever Indian team went outside, we were never taken seriously. And that's something which we wanted to change. And we wanted our team or our generation of players to be known as trendsetters. That's the exact word which we used and phrased in the team meeting, saying that this team wanted to be trendsetters. And our last wish, because I was going to retire in Australia, Rahul was going to retire in Australia, our last wish was to beat England in England. And I also beat Australia in Australia, and that was my big dream. So there I put extra pressure. It's interesting that Sailaja, my wife, she came to Melbourne before the start of the first test, and she watched me, and she already knew that I was not going to do well. The reason is she saw my face and she told, why are you putting so much of pressure on yourself? And that's the kind of cricketer I was, is I wanted to take the responsibility of winning the test match or series for the team. And not only me, the generation of batsmen who played alongside me or the bowlers took the same responsibility and had the same feeling. That's why we did well in overseas conditions. So those 2 test series, England and Australia, and the first 4 years was a tough phase.
Just a small little thing, of course, great insights. When you become a one-format player as well, someone like Cheteshwar Pujara currently, there's a story in the book as well, and he's rated very highly. Numbers are suggesting that, of course, he's doing a lot of great things. But I actually had to mention that he's a one-format player. It's not easy to be a one-format player. It's very rare that you get to play 17 test matches back-to-back. It's generally 8 test matches spread over 12 months. And
I don't think that's going to happen ever again. I don't think so, really.
Correct.
This has been bizarre almost.
But imagine a 2 test match series for someone like Laxman, and I'm sure you felt it as well, that when you're not playing one-day cricket, you play the first test match. If you don't score runs, there is enough pressure. Suddenly, okay, somebody who scored runs in one-day cricket becomes automatic choice or an option.
We can all understand it.
Correct,
Yeah, but that
true.
was not the case, Aakash. That's what I say. In India, having that perception is very important. And even the team management. So it won't happen to Pujara, because especially after his comeback and this season, he's proven to everyone that he's a top-class test batsman. So even though Pujara doesn't play the one-day format, a T20 format, how much ever the other batsmen who are playing in T20 and one-day score runs, it's very difficult to dislodge Pujara from the test team, which happened to me, because there was no one who was questioning my ability to do well in test match cricket.
Once you establish yourself
Once
as
you
a test
establish
player.
yourself, the captain, the team management, the selectors, everyone knows that you're an important, integral part of the test team. So irrespective of whether it's some youngsters or whoever is doing well in T20 or one day, never will there be a question mark about my
I
place.
recognize
I actually-
Aakash's expression when
Yeah,
you're
because
making a point like that.
I disagree
Here's the
for a-
argumentative Aakash Chopra now coming out. He'll defend his point.
No,
So
but I
let's allow
disagree
him.
for a simple reason that Cheteshwar Pujara was dropped not too long ago. And he had some sterling numbers in India. He was performing, he could take 2 double centuries till them, any case. And there was Rohit Sharma who was preferred over him. Also, and actually the team management came out and said, he doesn't really come into our 5 top batsmen. He had a poor run in England and Australia. He was...
Maybe that was the
shown
reason he
all.
was dropped.
So
on
that was
performance.
not the reason with me, not the case
Yeah.
with me, because what was happening was I did well in all the overseas tours as well. So there was no question mark. The toughest part of playing one format is that and as you get little old, is you're very rusty. So it took time, especially whenever we used to travel to Sri Lanka. That was the toughest tour for all of us, because it was during the off season or just after the off season, and monsoon, so you don't really get to practice outdoors. And then you go to Sri Lanka, you play one practice match, and invariably we lose that toss in that practice match, and Sri Lankan A team scores
728
700
or
odd
so.
runs in the first innings, and then we get only one inning. and then you play a test match. So then it is a slow start to the test series. So that was what I felt was always the problem if you're playing one format. So you're not in touch as you would be if you're playing all the three formats. You're playing more matches.
Just looking out for Nikhil, how are we on time? How much more? 15 minutes more. Okay. So I think a few other notes that I've made, which Jaideep has actually forced me to make note, and please bring up these topics. So I'm going to do that. Jaideep, sorry. I made an impact. Okay. Now, any guesses for the most impactful performance in the 1983 World Cup from an Indian player?
Batsman, sorry.
Batsman, sir. One, Mohinder Ramanatha, there's Kapil Dev. We are talking about a batsman. Yeah, fine, you're right, 175, yeah. But here you go. Impact Index ka another bombshell.
So, okay, it's not Shrikant, it's not Mohinder Ramanatha, it's not Yashpal Sharma, which is a name you should have taken. It is Sandeep Patil, and it's really interesting because, so, I was a huge cricket fan at that time, and I remember watching him come out to bat. You know, Mohinder Ramanatha and Yashpal had taken India to very calm territories. India was 142 for 3, chasing 213. And this guy comes out, and he appeared to give finishing touches to the match. He just finished off the match, and everybody said he gave finishing touches. And I think a lot of people remember him like that. He was not the highest scorer in that game. Yashpal was. He was not the highest scorer in the World Cup final. Shrikant was. However, in this particular thing, when he came out to bat at 142 for 3, what is really interesting is, when England were batting, they were 139 for 3, and they collapsed to 213. You don't even have to, you know, get out of that day to give another example, because the other semi-final was going on simultaneously between West Indies and Pakistan. And Pakistan were 139 for 3, 141 for 3, and they collapsed for 183. And, you know, West Indies won easily. This guy comes out to bat, 72 runs to win from there, and they make 63 runs in 9 overs, which in 1983 is unthinkable. It is surreal. He finishes off the match pretty much in 9 overs. After that, whatever 7 runs are made, or whatever 9 runs are made by Kapil Dev comes in and all that. This is what he did in the semi-final. In the final, he came out to bat at 90 for 3, which very quickly became 91 for 4. Then, you know, Kapil Dev was out. It was 114 for 6 at one point. Everything was falling apart. He made 27 in some 29 balls in that. And when he got out, India had already made more than 140, which obviously, you know, the famous West Indies score. Of course, they added to the scoreboard pressure by what, you know, Madan Lal and Sandhu and all those guys scored in the end. That is fine. The thing is that he was the second highest scorer in both these games, in these two really, really important matches, at an insane strike rate, which actually took the pressure off completely. These are things which are kind of missed. And frankly, I had to do a double take. As somebody who was, you know, into cricket in a huge way at that time, I had to do a double take. And then, you know, we kind of ran this story through people, ran it through Aakash. It's a really interesting story, and if you see all that he did in that tournament, he kept coming and being the second highest scorer. Except in the game against Zimbabwe, which India won, where they made 150. That is the only game where he was the highest scorer. In every other match, he was the second highest scorer in many other games, which sometimes nobody remembers.
I'm glad, Jaideep, that you pointed that out, because this is exactly what Sandeep Bhai told to all of us when he was the coach of the India under-19 side in '94 against Australia and England. And he told, unfortunately, he still feels bad. That, again, I tell her, in India, everyone is so much about numbers. Sandeep Bhai was someone, we talk about the difficult position in especially in one-day cricket, it has to be number 6, number 7, or number 5 onwards. And Sandeep Bhai was probably one of the best finishers India has ever seen, but no one ever gives credit to it. So as a youngster, he was teaching to all of us, saying that don't be Sandeep Patil. If you have to have longevity in India, I wouldn't name the other players he spoke, but he told that you have to have those 100s, those 200s, and he himself felt that I never looked at batting in that way. I mean, you played more with Sandeep Bhai than probably I've done, but that, you know, that period of 6 months was a great experience for all our generation of cricketers who was playing under 19. And he told that if you have to have longevity, if you have to make a name for yourself, don't be a Sandy Patel, because I played the game with a different perspective. I wouldn't like to change it, but then you won't get recognized for those kind of efforts.
But this is very sad, isn't it? It's kind of very
So that's
sad.
why I think what you're doing is good, you know, Jaideep, because my couple of 50s, at least this group of people will remember and feel, ye bhi thoda bahut khela acha. Then there's another memorable, World Cup game, India-Pakistan at Centurion. Remember that, South Africa? The inning that people will talk about is, of course, Sachin's 90, right? But when he got out, I think India needed still another 100 runs or 90 runs to win the game. Just look that up. Can somebody reconfirm that? Because that is something I've got in my head. And UV and Rahul actually saw India through.
Yeah.
90 runs to get.
Yeah.
Sachin's got out.
Yeah.
So, when you look at impact index, maybe that inning may not rank that high because he didn't see India through.
Because he shared impact, basically.
Yeah.
Impact
So
with these guys.
Yeah, so there you go.
But the importance of, in Sandeep Patel's context, is the strike rate. The strike rate at that time, when 183 was a winning score in a 55-over game, he was striking at 90, and that's what separates Sir Vivian Richards from the rest, because his strike rate
Vivian
was
Richards
81.
is great. He played in an era when 50 overs was coming into its own. The general strike rate of people like Desmond Haynes and all these guys was 60, 70. My strike rate was 60, Desmond Haynes was 70, Greenwich 70. Vivian Richards in that time was 89. On his own. One of the only guys who was in that league, 89 strike rate, when the accepted strike rate was about 70, 75.
And for that, you will have to remind people, right? That should not be the case. That importance of that strike rate at that point in time should be quantifiable in some sense. Similarly, bowling maiden overs in a test game, someone like Anil Kumble just plugging one end and you're not giving anything away, and Harbhajan Singh picking wickets from the other end.
That also
gets
recognized?
It does get recognized and gets rewarded in Impact Index. So that's something that actually I like about, one of the things that I like about Impact Index is that these things that in a game context, that it has made a difference, but eventually they'll just go unnoticed because you haven't tapped it.
Which is the area you don't agree with Impact Index or Jaideep? Let's make this a very honest conversation, because that is where I think the respect comes.
So one area where we have disagreed on is home and away, where Pakistani players are obviously rating very high, the batsmen especially, but they haven't travelled as much as the Indian counterparts. The same is the case with Sri Lankans. They haven't travelled that well or that much rather. If you don't travel that often, it's slightly unfair to compare someone like, say, Yunus Khan with Virat Kohli. Yunus Khan, I think, has played 4 now. They've toured again. So he may have played about 6 test matches in Australia. Virat Kohli in his short career.
Already 8.
In fact, 10, I think, or 8 or 10 test matches he's already played there. So same will be the case with other countries. So that is one area where
Sri Lankans also don't play much in Australia.
He drew the series in England.
Yunus Khan now, afterwards, after we finish the book, by the way. But there is definitely one argument that, okay, home away, you need to give reward and
what about those innings? I mean, I know we are talking more about batsmen, considering, it's lopsided here in favor of batsmen. What about those innings that we all remember? Even the cricketers get dazed by those. The hugeness of the innings, a 501 or the 2 triple hundreds, all those kind of massive innings. Do they get any respect at all here?
So I'll just answer this with one very interesting thing, which is that Brian Lara's highest impact 2 test innings, which is 213 and his 153 not out against Australia. These are his 2 highest impact. They don't total up to 375. That's my answer to this question. That, the circumstances of those performances, and if you go and see the scorecard, you'll know. And those who saw that 153 not out, will never forget it.
But we as cricketers, I think we all acknowledge 501 and these kind of numbers like Brian Lara got, maybe in a county scenario. But they're incredible numbers, right? I mean, they may not have been match-winning numbers, but it takes some doing.
Yeah, absolutely. See, there's again no disrespect for that performance. I mean, getting to 375, getting to 400 shows a lot of mental strength. Getting to 500 shows amazing mental strength in a county game, because especially someone like Lara would never ever want to play for so long. To show that kind of interest to continue and scoring that 500 is unbelievable. But the conditions, Antigua was a flat wicket. The bowling lineup was, I wouldn't say it was average bowling lineup, but against those two knocks. And if you ask Brian also will probably rate those two knocks ahead of a 400 and a 375. And any genuine cricket lover who understands the game knows the importance and the impact of those two knocks, because single-handedly, I mean, again, there were no one around Brian to even contribute. And against a quality Australian bowling lineup, single-handedly playing those kind of knocks, and definitely that would be the impact knock. So if you ask me, I would never rate that 400 as far as the impact is concerned, but pure determination, definitely top. But those two knocks against Australia was better than the 400.
Yeah, just coming to the end of our discussion, so just want to travel in time and yeah, which is the intention. But just one final, Ashwin is obviously somebody making a huge impact. We're watching Virat Kohli and we are getting mesmerized by what he is doing. How does he, come through?
Virat Kohli is a work in progress, but what a work in progress, because as of now, and this happened after the book was, because the book considers numbers till only 5th November, and this has happened, after that against England. He's the third highest impact, according to our thing, he's the third highest impact number 4 batsman of all time, after Greg Chappell and Everton Weekes. Which is an insane thing, if you think about it, because it's not even because he's played series-defining performances, it's because of the high proportion of runs he's making. The very, very high proportion of runs. India is not an easy place to bat in today, actually, or has not been over the last. And he and Pujara have done incredibly well in these conditions, which is another reason to not underestimate these kind of performances in your home country, because India is a pretty tough place to bat today. I mean, you may have the advantage of knowing the conditions, but it is still a tough place. And so he's the third highest impact number 4 batsman ever, which is pretty interesting thing. Of course, it may not stay like that, but let's see how.
Just a question, Jaideep. Like how did you also factor in? You told about India is not a tough place to bat nowadays. It is a tough place, to bat. Have you also considered batsmen who were playing on uncovered wickets, without protective gear, against quality fast bowlers, no bouncer rule, the front foot, no ball. Did you also factor that in?
See, I'll tell you how we factor it in. Because every match, every performance in a match is measured according to the context of that match and that series. So automatically it gets factored in. So,
it's a comparative analysis.
And that's where I think the Peter May story stands
out.
That
is the best story.
We should end with that. We should end with that, Jaideep, this discussion.
Whose story?
Peter May.
Brilliant.
Peter May's story stands out. So you are obviously a better person.
This is the story I'm proudest of, and so the highest impact batsman in the history of Test cricket after Donald Bradman is a batsman who averaged 46.77. His name is Peter May, and he batted primarily in the 50s, which was the lowest scoring decade in 100 years from the First World War till now. It is the lowest scoring decade because after the war, a lot of runs were being scored. So everybody around the world, England started it, and everybody around the world took that lead. They started making tougher wickets to bat on. So it was the toughest decade to bat on, and he also it's really interesting. That is the best England team in the history of the game in terms of not having lost for the longest time. So they were unbeaten for the longest period in their history till date. And he played the biggest role as not only as a batsman but as a player, even if you account for the fantastic bowling that he had. And the most interesting thing, he has absorbed the most pressure in the history of Test cricket. If you take 50 matches as a minimum, the most. Otherwise, it's Nawab, Mansoor Ali Khan Patodi, which is an incredible fact, because normally that would happen in a weaker side. Because Andy Flower, Angelo Matthews, those people, because, wickets are falling around them. This was a guy who did it in the best Test team of its time. So the huge contribution, and there are, several reasons like this. It is an incredible story, and it is very hard to, we found it very hard, and it took us a while to kind of start believing it ourselves.
Amazing. Ladies and gentlemen, big round of applause to our panelists here. Jaideep, Aakash and VVS, thank you very much for your thoughts and thanks for your patience.
Thanks.
Questions? Yeah. There are 4 hands for 5, 6. Time-wise, kaise hai?
Hello,
5, 7 minutes, so as many as possible. Sambit Bal has raised his hand, but I won't go there first because people will think that I'm doing chamchegiri of my boss. Somebody before that, genuine cricket fan behind.
So my first ever memory of an impact
Just get a
performance.
mic and ask her. Yeah.
So my first ever memory of an impact performance was Ajay Jadeja's 46 of 28 in the quarterfinals of the World Cup '96. If I remember correctly, Navjot Sidhu scored a century and was, I think, man of the match.
90. He
90.
made 90.
Yeah. So my question to both you guys is that don't you think the man of the match should now be replaced by an impact player of the match?
Thank you for. Can I just say this? Thank you for giving me the opportunity of saying this. 46% of the time, the man of the match award is not given to the highest impact player. It should. I repeat, it should not happen every time. For example, the innings he brought up, Rahul Dravid's 148 in Headingley, was not the highest impact performance. Tendulkar, by sheer weight of runs, was the highest impact, but he got the man of the match rightly. But 46% of the time, the highest impact player is not the man of the match, by and large. And that is a bit of a scandal, to be honest.
This adjudication of man of the match is that it's done in a very rushed manner. Quickly, the commentary team is generally entrusted with this responsibility. I remember when I got an 80 in a run chase against England, and Jeffrey Boycott at Yorkshire was given the job of selecting the man of the match. And he chose Anil Kumble, who had bowled 10 overs for 20 runs or something like that. He said, you played well, but the impact was that spell of Anil Kumble. It was a very economical spell, and he gave it to Anil. So I wish that happens more. You're right. Second question, quickly. Mike le lo hath.
Hello, I want to ask this question to Mr. Chopra. So we know like the Fab Four of the recent time, Williamson, Smith, Kohli and Root. So keeping the numbers aside, who do you think is the best performer in all three formats for now?
All three formats, I think Virat Kohli will be definitely number one with the way he's performing in all three formats. In fact, he's challenging our conventional wisdom as well that, oh, you cannot have average beyond this specific number in T20 cricket, but what he's doing is surreal. So currently, I think in all format batsmen, it has to be Kohli.
Sambit, quickly let me get Sambit. Zyada bhi ye nahi karna chahiye. Sorry, the mic was right in your hands. I'm so sorry. Didn't realize it.
Mine is not actually a question. I just wanted you to,
for
the benefit of the audience, maybe in 2 minutes, tell us how impact index is worked out. Because I think the presenter missed that.
As you said, your boss.
Yes. I'm doing your job, sir.
Yeah. That is the only feedback I get from Sambit Bal for the last 15 years. This kind of feedback. Okay.
No, impact index very quickly fundamentally measures a performance within the context of the match and the series that match is a part of. That is what it fundamentally does. Therefore, it also, when you're looking at the match context, it makes certain things tangible which otherwise seem intangible. Like, for example, absorbing the pressure of falling wickets. You look at the follow wickets column, it becomes tangible instantly. That is one example. Also, things like in limited overs cricket, strike rate. If you look at it, like for example, he was saying, his strike rate was 89 and his. Now the thing is that you are not actually measuring that within the context of each match. So in a match, for example, the average strike rate of a match may be much higher and your average, your strike rate might be higher. Therefore, things get skewed like that. That does not happen in impact. So I want to say this, these are not subjective measures. These are proportions. Proportions cannot be subjective. I find it very frustrating and we have all tried very hard to explain this. These are not subjective numbers. At its fundamental level. Yes, there are certain things we apply according to our judgment, but by and large, these are not subjective things. The fundamental calculations are not subjective. It's just that nobody has, for some reason, which I do not understand, because it really should be in the area of either journalists doing it, more statisticians doing it, but they don't do it, which is map games from a series context or even in a match context to be able to actually find how, like for example, factoring in how to, what's a big performance on a flat pitch or a difficult pitch. They should be able to calculate that, and these are all, relative numbers, proportions. So this is not subjective. That is what we do in a nutshell. Now we can, obviously go into greater detail.
Yeah, it is slightly, you feel sad when you look at the top 10 run getters in Test match cricket, and there's nobody from the 1950s anymore. So all the legends, the great names are never there on the screen for the modern audiences to look at. So which is a bit unfortunate. I'll take his question first because the mic was in his hand. Aise hi pucho, aise hi pucho.
You're asking me?
Yeah.
I'll have to say this again.
Yeah, for the audience.
Yeah. He's asking whether the ranking system of teams and individually is good. If the existing system is not. Look, from Impact Index's perspective, it's a scandal. I'll be honest, and I don't care. It's a disgrace, to be honest. What we can do, we can do both team rankings and individual rankings 5 times better. Unfortunately, we are never going to get the chance to do it because it is not about merit, it is about politics. Why it comes. That's the honest truth from my point of view.
What could be the politics amongst numbers?
It's not politics amongst numbers. It's politics amongst the people who are generating numbers. David Kendricks is very deeply entrenched in the ICC system.
Oh, okay.
That's what it is. And we all know that, by the way, in cricket, unfortunately.
Okay. Ayaz.
So I have a two-pronged question for VVS or Aakash or you, anybody. One is that are players conscious of figures, averages? Now we will have impact index when they go out to bat and say, hey, I'm in this situation, maybe let's make a good impact and get out and I'll be number 1. Get on with it. Or are, you, as it should be, you see the match situation, you play accordingly. Not worried about the index. I know a lot of players, Sanjay mentioned in passing that somebody wants to remain not out, so inflate his average. Are players really conscious of that? Are they getting increasingly conscious of that? Because everything is now linked to data and it's data-led.
Well, I can't comment about the present day generation of players because I don't know them so well. But the players I played with, yes, definitely everyone was conscious of the numbers, including myself. I still remember sitting with Viru in 2003, our computer analyst, Ramki was there. And as I mentioned, the first 4 years, my average was just some 19 or 22. And after 2000, I wanted to come to that figure of 50. That was my individual goal as well. And during the 2003-4 Australia series, I sat down with Ramki and I mentioned, how can I get my average from, I think it was 42 or 43 at that moment, to 50? So definitely, I think players are conscious of the numbers, conscious of the milestones. But I've always had the problem if suppose those milestones are the goals. I always feel, and all the players I played always felt that the milestones are byproduct of what you try to do for the team. So if suppose a situation demanded you to go out and play a free-flowing innings, which was a demand of the situation, and even if that makes sure that your average is coming down because you're getting out, doesn't mean that you're looking for a not out so that you maintain that average. So I think the players definitely understand the numbers. Players are conscious of the numbers, but I'm not sure that that is their goal.
Aakash, will they be more aware now because of numbers taking such more visible in your face now?
On the contrary, I think they will be, they won't be selfish at all because we live in a T20 world and we understand that a 70 at times is not as important as a 35 or 15 balls. And eventually that the auction that we had a couple of days ago, it will actually reflect and vindicate that, you were a selfless cricketer and you went out and scored as many runs in so few balls, and that's how you become and you rake in the moolah. So I think players, there was a time, you're right, Ayaz, there was a time, in fact, there was a player in the Indian cricket team as well. He went out to bat towards the end and was still taking singles. He had a bowler at the other end. He was taking singles in the 50th over. And I think that was the last time he played for India. Because within the team, everybody knew that, okay, this is not acceptable. So your average gets inflated. Thank you very much. But it stays there because it won't get inflated again because you won't get an opportunity.
But actually the averages, the old-fashioned kind of averages and aggregate runs were responsible for this kind of an approach.
Correct.
If there's a match winning impact index, then it will have the right effect, even if it's a selfish...
That's actually what I wanted to say, that, my humble opinion is that, cricket should be so lucky, not impact index, but if it just adds contextual numbers, because automatically anybody who plays for the team will be doing better on a system like this. And I don't care if it's impact index or somebody else.
Okay.
Yeah, that lady will be the second last question there. Just,
Can I ask one?
Yeah, just give her, I've given my word. Second last question, yeah.
Hi. So, like you said, we're living in the T20 era. So, how does we spoke about how short-lived impact Ashwin's made. So how do you think year after year, a lot of performances are rated higher in one particular season and then they're gone in the next season? So how does that how is that placed in your impact index? Like,
And also then address the T20 cricket's relationship going forward with impact index.
See, T20 cricket's relationship with impact index is really natural because T20 conventional numbers don't make any sense. I mean, they don't have any value. And something like this within the context of each match obviously then has greater value. To answer your question, if we look at performances, you know, over a period of time, certain qualities of certain cricketers will come to the fore, which we will be able to pick out. And we will be able to pick out those qualities very quickly. For example, we spoke of Sunil Narine, Jasprit Bumrah, and several other players before anybody else had, which nobody talks about. It really pisses me off, to be honest. Nobody talks about it. We have spoken about all these things, but it's very sad, actually, that, you know, that happens. But, you know, this is actually perfect for T20 cricket, and because it looks at everything from a match perspective, so therefore you are able to, you know, get a much truer picture of performances.
Let's take two final questions. Aapke paas mic hai.
My question is for VVS. VVS, how you rate your innings against Australia at Mohali in 2008, where you have finished the job with Ishant and Oja?
73 not out, right?
Again, one of the best I have played. It's not only about the situation, it's about the fitness issue I was having. And also with Ishant and then with Oja, to give them the self-belief. So it was not only about managing your game, it was about getting the best from your two colleagues. You know, so I think that definitely was one of the important knocks for me. And that again gets highlighted because we went on to win the game. If suppose we would have got to 10 runs and we lost the game, probably it wouldn't have been as satisfying as probably because we won the game.
Ishant is easy to manage on the field, or?
Very, very easy. Why you feel that he's tough?
No, because he seems, when I look at him on the field, no, looks a very sort of hard-working workhorse kind of a guy that you would love to have on the field.
Absolutely, and that's the reason he's been there for so many years. But he's a fantastic guy who's always keen to do well, whatever responsibility is given for the team.
Tailenders who are so badly equipped to, you know, face the challenge that they have to, still want to go there and do that. You know, my heart actually goes out to number 10 and 11 when they're trying to, you know, play with batsmen in that fashion.
I think from the Tailenders' point of view, just digressing from what we're discussing, what's important is not about the technique. What's important is whether they've got a big heart. You know, and I was fortunate to bat with bowlers or with the Tailenders. I mean, I wouldn't like to call them Tailenders because all of them had a huge impact in some of the successes of Indian team from 2000 onwards. But they had big heart, you know, and irrespective of whether they're technically correct or not, whether they're getting into position in a right manner or not, against the best bowlers, the quickest bowlers we played, they told that I will stand with you. You don't worry. You just go out and play your game. Don't worry about me because I'm going to hang in here. I'm going to fight it out. And that's very important. Sometimes top quality, top class batsmen or top order batsmen also don't have that kind of attitude. You know, that's why I got huge respect for the bowlers I played with.
Last question, yeah.
For Jaideep, you mentioned there are some areas where you use human judgment in impact index. What are those areas? What exactly is subjective? And I'll sneak another one in. What about impact index for fielding?
Fielding, unfortunately, we can't because everything is based on the scorecard. So we have fielding, but we are really mapping catches and stumpings. We can't measure anything else because it's based on the scorecard. There's nothing else that, you know, you can't measure saves on a scorecard unless you look at the commentary. So we can't do that. So we are very clear that that's the limitation that we have. As far as subjective element, I suppose the series defining, you can call it a subjective element, but is it subjective to say that when a team is behind in a series and a player produces a performance which either levels the series scoreline or, you know, wins the series for his team, is it really subjective to say that that is a more significant performance from his team's cricketing history? That's the thing. That would be the subjective element that I would talk about. I would say no, it's not. And yeah, there are others, but there are very minor tweaks. I'd have to get into details to say, but that's the major one.
Okay.
Sorry, are you done?
You could probably objectify that, no? If you come from behind in the scoreline, you can make that into an objective measure.
Just before you answer that question, she's a former India player.
Sure.
She just recently
I know that.
retired. Right, she played for
to
India.
yesterday. Yeah. Yeah.
You could objectify something like, something that changes the scoreline and comes from behind to...
When you mean objectify, what?
As
what
in the sense, it doesn't need to be subjective. You can make that one of your...
Yeah. I mean, yeah, but, yes, you can, and that's what we do. We have, the specific rules, and of course that becomes objective then in that sense. But this is a rule that we set. This is not a proportion. Like everything else is a proportion. And also, how much extra value do you give to that performance? That is a little subjective. So we've come up with something which we believe is the fairest, and it's taken us a long time to come to that. So, how much extra value do you give a performance that actually, changes the series? We have actually discussed that in the book.
Great. Thank you so much, Sanjay, Jaideep, Aakash, and VVS. We are
Thanks
now breaking for lunch. Just to let you know that the book Numbers Do Lie is available at the bookstore right behind. I don't know if Jaideep and Aakash would want to go and sign if there are people there. We're breaking for lunch. We converge back at 2:30. We'll have Virendra Sehwag in the house. So come back for that.